Hey y'all, welcome back to this week's episode of AMA Friday with Amy Miller, Recruiting in Yoga Pants. So this week, I want to talk with y'all about what happens when recruiters try to influence or change tools and processes from the inside. So I've been chatting about this with one of my very good friends, someone that I've been working with as they are going through a very traumatic job search, long-term job search. And we were kind of touching on this a few times in our last couple of conversations. So I'm going to share with all of you what I think and what happens and how easy or hard it can be to create the kind of change that many of you are looking for. So one of the things that we talked about is how much finger pointing there is at recruiters. The messenger gets shot all the time. Now, I will say, yes, absolutely, recruiters are responsible for how they do their jobs. So how they are providing fair consideration to applicants, how they are sending quality outreach and messages to prospective candidates, how they're engaging on social media with various folks and representing their organizations, how they're partnering with their hiring teams, whether or not they're following best practices and compliance laws and regulations. I get it. I am not suggesting recruiters do not bear any responsibility here, but I will tell you that many of the things y'all complain about are out of our hands. So we are doing the best we can with the tools that we have, with the volume that we might be dealing with the expectations put upon us by the people signing our paychecks. So let's dig in. I have two specific examples that I want to share with you. These are examples from two different companies that I no longer work for. So this is based on previous history, previous situations that I have been in. The first one we're going to talk about is a new ATS implementation. And the second is going to be more personal to me, something that I tried to implement at this employer for my specific team. So I'm not there anymore for a reason. Okay, so let's talk about implementing a new ATS. So I know that there's a lot of cool new systems on the market. I know that a lot of people and I've been told this. This is why I'm kind of amused by it. But I know, and I've said before, like, yeah, the ATS or the ATS I used at that organization or the one I had over at that place wasn't great. I hated it. I didn't love it, whatever. Well, then just get a new one. Okay. So let's unpack that, okay? Just get a new one. Get a new ATS altogether. Did that one time. I was obviously not part of the decision-making process, but as a user, I was invited to beta test and help, drive what we're looking for and all of these things. Friends, it was a years, plural, years long process. So not only to build the new system, basically the company had gone out and purchased a new system, but it was going to embed with an existing internal system, and there was going to be some different features and things. And so basically this new system that the company had purchased could be configured to their specifications. Okay, so I don't care what you read about iCIMS on the internet and what it can do. We may or may not have gotten those features because, again, there was an implementation based on what leadership thought was important and how it was going to interact with the other internal tools and systems that recruiting and HR and people management used. Years in the making. And once it was rolled out, there was this massive like training push and all these videos, and we had to go to all these meetings and it was involved. Now you might say, well, Amy, that was a large company. And it was. It was a big tech company. Yeah, big company. A lot of users. A lot of money. So I want you to imagine, what are the headwinds when it comes to just go buy a new system? If you are a very tiny company and you have a handful of users, you might be able to just go buy something off the shelf and very quickly move all of your data and set it up very easily. You may be able to do that. There are even free ATSs out there that folks can have very limited usage and things, or maybe pay a monthly subscription fee or something like that. That's fine. You can do that. But again, those free or very cheap versions are not going to come with all the fancy bells and whistles and nonsense that y'all keep telling me exist. I'm not doubting those features exist. I am definitely doubting that they are, number one, bought, number two, implemented properly, and number three, used by the end user. Your mileage may vary, but I'm just saying, a lot of times what y'all read is not what's happening on the inside. So I share that specific story with you because that implementation, if you're a very small company, again, we already kind of talked about that, but let's say I'm a very large company and I've got tons of cash and I have lots of money to spend on this. I'm happy to throw $200,000, $300,000. Oh no, I'm not kidding. Hundreds of thousands of dollars into this multi-year investment. Multi-year investment. This is not a switch that gets flipped overnight. I've seen it done more than once. And in this one situation, which was the biggest company I've ever seen it done at, as I said, years in the making. Okay? Now, on the back end, the career side, what candidates see, what the external folks see, it was relatively seamless. It didn't look like anything changed. All of that change was on the back end, logging into a new system, learning how to enable knockout questions, all the compliance things that go with that. Okay, so that's one example. So that's when y'all say just go get a new ATS. Oh, honey, it is not that simple. Now let's talk about on a smaller level. That's fine, Ames. You don't have the authority to go buy a new ATS. Fine, we won't ask you to do that anymore. But what can you personally do as a recruiter to make this better, to be a better recruiter, to treat people better, to enable better processes? Well, let me tell you something that I personally did. Now, this was at a different company than the one with the new ATS, but not my current company. Okay, this is prior to me joining the company I work for today, as of the making of this video. I was reviewing our pass-through rates. I'm obsessed with pass-through rates. Okay, I want to know at every step of the process, what percentage of people are moving forward? Where are we doing very well? Where are we, maybe underperforming? I'll get into that in a future video if that's interesting to y'all. I am obsessed with data like that and pass-through rates and effectiveness of different things. So I was investigating our pass-through rates. I was getting feedback from my business that they weren't seeing enough resumes. We're not hiring quickly enough. What can we do? We need more. Not enough volume here. And I thought, gosh, I feel like I see a lot of submissions. I know my sourcing team is working really hard. I know that we're doing a lot of activity. How is this not translating into interviews and hires? So I start digging into the data and digging into the pass-through rates, and I learned that 50%, half of our submittals were not being reviewed at all. The way that this internal ATS was set up, we would, in every company I've worked at, I'm almost positive, at least most companies, if not all, the process is the submittal happens in the ATS. We hit a button, we add notes, whatever, and it goes to the hiring manager. So the hiring manager will have a queue in the ATS that is visible to them. And they are expected to review those resumes, push it forward, reject it, add comments, whatever. So, at this organization, those submittals expired after 7 days. And when I say they expire, I mean that submittal is now no longer available to the hiring manager to view in their dashboard or in their queue. So 50% of the people that my team has gone out and vetted and clarified and confirmed would be a fit, you're not even seeing to begin with. Can you imagine how furious I was? So I immediately implemented 2 things. Number 1, if you are a hiring manager, you now have a 48-hour SLA, and I am now going to send you a report once a week and to your boss, letting you know if you met or did not meet your SLA. Number 2, if you consistently missed your SLA, we would pause recruiting for your role. And I put all of this into a little dashboard I built in Excel, and I had all of this data available to the hiring manager, to the sourcing recruiter, and to leadership. And I said, this is what we're going to do. We cannot continue to ignore, or better said, let submittals expire. So you have a responsibility to make sure that you are checking your queue every couple of days, meet that 48-hour SLA, so that we are moving people forward more efficiently and effectively. You know who didn't like it? My boss. My sourcing team was like, yes, thank you, finally, somebody cares. My hiring teams, you know what, Ames? You're right. We do need to be better at this. Thank you for putting the guardrails in place. Thank you for helping us be better. Everybody's good with this. Everybody's cool. My boss was actually not happy with me over this and told me I couldn't do it anymore. So friends, wasn't much longer that I decided that was no longer the place for me. But I remember having a couple of challenging conversations about why this was really important and how it was impacting our candidate experience, let alone our ability to deliver. And it did not go over well. It was not well received. Who's at fault in that case for all of those submissions that went unviewed and unanswered? The recruiter y'all like to shoot at on LinkedIn, or someone else? Food for thought, y'all. I'm merely sharing this with you, 2 examples, just a little bit of insight, real world examples that I've personally lived to help y'all understand what recruiters are sometimes up against. That does not mean don't complain. That does not mean don't provide feedback. Please do. We need to hear it. We need to know how our target audience feels about these things and what you're experiencing. But I am going to urge you, give us feedback, work with us, help us make suggestions, help us change things from the inside if you're able, and maybe pause before you start firing on the messenger. All right, y'all. Hope that gave you a little bit of insight you didn't have before. Let me know down below if you have any questions, want to talk more about this. I would love to dig into like pass-through rates, things like that, how we manage our effectiveness, KPIs in recruiting, things like that, if that's interesting. So let me know down below. And as always, see you next week.